HR employees, what was the most ridiculous/hilarious complaint you ever received? Story 1. Was once asked to investigate a sexual harassment situation where 3 different women were coming on to a male coworker throughout their shift. I took down the details, got the names, easy investigation. So I thought. A week later, nobody by these descriptions or names had ever worked for the company. I decided to talk to the gentleman again. After a lengthy conversation where things didn't quite stack up, I asked him how these women communicated with him. I shit you not, with a straight face, he looks me in the eye and replies, telepathically, like I'm some kind of idiot. I had never sent an employee for psychological evaluation up to that point, and I hope never to have to again. So yeah, I was asked by a delusional schizophrenic to conduct a sexual harassment investigation on the voices in his head. Story 2. Not HR, but my company is too small to have one, so it just falls on me. Used to have an A/R clerk who would snack at her desk all day long. We are a pretty casual, laid-back company, so it's not a big deal as long as she was getting her work done. But then it escalated to having food constantly being delivered, tacos in the morning, pizza at lunch, Chinese in the afternoon. It was bizarre, and made it difficult for her to work when she's eating full meals all day. I was on the fence about saying something until she brought in an Instant Pot. She plugged it in and cooked a freaking pork roast at her desk, poured in barbecue sauce she brought and ate on it all day. I was dumbfounded, it was so strange. I pulled her aside the next day and told her how unprofessional it was. She was shocked and told me I was being unfair because I never specifically said no one was allowed to bring in an Instant Pot. She truly seemed genuinely surprised that she wasn't allowed to do that. She scaled it down after that, but I sometimes wonder how much further she would have gone if I never said anything. Story 3. The company only had one men's toilet. Had a coworker complain that another guy kept using the bathroom before him and dropping huge stank bombs. The way he said it was like this guy knew when he was about to go, and ninja'd in just before he did. Dropped a massive stinker and then forced the other guy to marinate in the smell when he went for a leak afterwards. We ended up adding a can of air freshener to the bathroom, and the next complaint that came in was the poo guy never used it. Story 4. Not HR, but I have a story about an HR person that I will never forget. The company I worked for hired a new girl in the HR department. She was young and very enthusiastic. I'm sure this was probably her first job out of college. Cut to a week or so later, and I'm riding in the elevator on the way up to the executive floor, and she steps in with me. A couple floors later we stop, and an older gentleman wearing a polo shirt and jeans gets on. Before I could greet him, she says, "Pretty casual for a workday, huh?" I had to stifle my laughter when he replied with, "That's one of the benefits of owning the company." She turned an amazing color of red that I haven't seen since. It was all in good fun though. She ended up working there a long time. To be fair, if I was the owner, I'd have admired that. She's brave enough to pull someone up for dressing too casually for the job, which means she obviously takes her job very seriously. Story 5. We had a complaint that the toilet roll holders were too low in the stalls because when a guy was taking a poo his knees were hitting the holders. We then lifted all the stall's toilet roll holders 8 inches on whole company site so no knees would hit the toilet roll holders. No complaints since. HR working for the people. Story 6. I was a manager and had to call our HR in on this one. We had a computer that was used by multiple people and a couple of girls complained that it had a virus and porn was always popping up when they turned it on in the morning. I decided to have look-see if someone was fudging around on the closing shift, so I looked at the security footage, and lo and behold one of the supervisors was watching porn and jerking off. When we called him in, he didn't deny it but said technically he didn't pull his dick out, he just played with it in his pants. So, it's not really that bad. The HR guy just looked at him, didn't say a word until after what seemed like forever. The jerker said, "So I guess I'm fired," and then walked out. Story 7. We had a guy in our office who suffered from some sort of medical condition. Because he wasn't managing it well, he would shit his pants in the office. That was awful, but hey, he's got a serious condition, so nobody wanted to take it to HR. Then, he started walking around the office while shitting his pants, which would cause the shit to fall out of his pants and onto the floor. We literally had to watch our step in order to avoid stepping in human feces. HR at our company was typically ineffective, so we started taking pictures of every shit pile and emailing it to every HR team member in our building. They eventually put him on disability. Story 8. I was the person complained about and, 2 decades later, I'm still salty about it. I got called into the HR manager's office one day and told that I was being written up for discussing inappropriate and sexual things in the office. I had never done that, ever. I was still a very much closeted gay boy at the time, so there wasn't a chance in hell I was going to talk about my sex life to the middle-aged women I worked with. Who complained about me? I asked, being young and naive. We can't tell you that. There are confidentiality rules, HR said. Okay, I understand. What was it that I supposedly said? We can't tell you that, either. You may use that to discover who lodged the complaint. So, I'm being written up because an anonymous person complained that I was saying sexual things in the office, but you won't tell me who complained or what I supposedly said. That's right. Now, please sign this form to indicate that you understand the severity of your infraction. No, I won't do that. You have to. It was a stalemate for almost 20 minutes while I refused to sign their form. They threatened to fire me, but I still refused to sign. In the end, she made some comment on the form about my unwillingness to participate in the process. Then, to top it off, the rest of the office wondered why I completely stopped speaking to all of them altogether. I refused to engage in any of the usual non-office-related talk. If it was not 100% required conversation in order to do my job, I flat out ignored my coworkers' presence. Again, I was called into HR and reprimanded for my abrasive demeanor. I quit that job shortly thereafter. Story 9. I'm not in HR, but someone called HR on me. I work with a few people that aren't that fluent in English. One of my coworkers was trying to explain to me what kind of tacos he ate and could not remember the word for stingrays. He took my notebook and drew a picture of a stingrays and wrote the word turtle. So, it looked like this, crudely drawn stingray and the word turtle. A lady I work with went through my notebook, saw the picture of the stingray plus the word turtle. She called HR because she thought I was writing notes about her in my notebook. She said that horribly drawn stingray plus the word turtle meant that I want to punch her in the face because she is slow like a turtle. Definitely a reach. I didn't get in trouble, I was just told by my boss that I'm not allowed to talk about turtles anymore in case it upsets her. I rarely talk about turtles, so this isn't really a problem for me. Story 10. I told my coworker as professionally as I could that it wasn't appropriate for her to be using her phone while at work, teaching kids, supposedly. She spent all her time on Facebook, little kids would be screaming and wailing on each other literally 10 feet away and she was totally oblivious. She complained by email to HR that I was rude and confrontational. They pulled me aside and told me to be more careful about how I spoke to coworkers. I told them my side of the story, they spoke to her again. She got a written warning. They didn't tell me what happened, but I gather from office gossip that she lost her shit and started shouting at the HR staff. Rude and confrontational perhaps? Anyway, she's on her final warning now, and she has a habit of hitting on the married dads of our kids, involving children in adult matters. Why hasn't your mummy paid your fees yet? Don't you want to come to daycare? And generally being an unprofessional, self-absorbed PETA so. Can't wait until she gets fired. Story 11. I recently had HR tell me that one of my staff had been undersupplied in his annual leave over the past few years, and he needed to take at least 10 days off over the next 6 months to correct the leave liability. Paid at a higher rate than usual to make up for the error, of course. He could take a 2-week block or, say, a day off a week until he'd used the leave, his choice. He was so enraged over being given extra paid holidays that he wrote to our general manager to complain, screamed at me, his boss, I know my rights, refused the leave or even to discuss why he wouldn't take it. Anyway, I wrote his performance review this week and there are multiple goals about professional, respectful behavior that need to be reached in order for him to get a raise this year. Yeah, not so much. Oh, and he still has to take the 10 days off. Story 12. What about when it's your boss? One of our bosses went to a Deepak Chopra thing and came back with a poster she put on the wall saying in one life we all wear many hats with a picture of 5 differently colored hats stacked on top of each other. Wow, Deepak. You're as deep as the ocean. Then she spent the 6 months trying to talk people into buying stuff from her, like toothpaste, jeans, all sorts of stuff. We'd be in her office on a meeting and suddenly it would segue into a sales pitch. Story 13. I worked in HR and my coworker hated me. She wanted someone else to get the job I did and she would complain about me to management for anything. The final straw for everyone was when I sneezed and she slammed her keyboard on her desk, basically ran out of the room and didn't come back for 30 minutes. Management called me in and said I was making too much noise. I told them I sneezed and they said she would complain about me every day, so they didn't believe her but had to make it look like they were doing something. She left shortly after. Story 14. You wouldn't believe the headaches that I received when management signed a new copier/printer lease, which reduced the overall number of printers in exchange for centrally located multiplex copiers. Evidently, people feel their social standing is signified by if they have a printer, or two, in their office. My favorite was an executive assistant who stated that, because she wears heels to work, she couldn't walk to the new copier and requested that a reasonable accommodation would be to replace the printer she had in her office. IT person here. The amount of people that have printer envy is astounding. And if they have color printing and someone else doesn't. Oh man, suddenly I have a job function that requires it as well. Always seems to be the people over 45-ish that care so much.